If you're trying to find a rehab for drug and alcohol addiction that accepts Medicaid, first of all, I'm sorry that you're dealing with this because I know how stressful it can be. But I mostly just want to give you some information that might help you move forward and make the right decision. My name is Rachel Goldstein. I've spent years around the recovery world. I'm in recovery myself. I have many friends who've gone through treatment. I've spent a lot of time helping people navigate treatment options and insurance plans. And finding treatment that accepts Medicaid is often a lot harder than people realize. A lot of people think that they're going to go online, search rehabs that take Medicaid, pick a place, and get their loved one or themselves admitted within a day or two. And unfortunately, it's not always that simple. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that because a treatment center appears in a Google search for Medicaid rehab, it actually accepts their Medicaid plan. Sometimes the center that comes up when you Google this does accept Medicaid, but maybe not your specific plan. And sometimes they don't accept Medicaid at all. So it can be a little bit confusing. Why do they show up in that search? Whether it's keywords or articles that have been written for that website. It can be really confusing because you can go through the process, find a treatment center that looks great, start making phone calls, and then suddenly realize they don't actually take your insurance plan. And so I just want to show you a quick example. So I Googled rehabs that take Medicaid, and I scroll down to the map where it comes up with the options, and the first two options are Recovery Centers of America, two of their different facilities. And you go to their website, and let's say we're going to Maryland, and then I search for the word insurance. Okay, verify insurance, and I look at insurance accepted, and I'm looking for Medicaid, and I don't see it. It doesn't look to me like Recovery Centers of America, at least this facility, takes Medicaid, even though it popped up as one of the search results, the two of the first search results actually. And this is why it's so important to call a facility before you get invested. I've heard stories from families who have spent days or weeks researching facilities, reading reviews, getting their loved one ready to go, and it turns out that the facility they thought took their insurance doesn't actually take Medicaid. So spending some time before you make any sort of decision or are invested in any particular place, making phone calls just to find out who takes Medicaid and who doesn't is going to be really valuable. The next thing you need to know is that Medicaid is not one single program. It's not like everyone who has Medicaid has the same exact insurance and the same exact coverage. So Medicaid in Pennsylvania is different from Medicaid in New Jersey, which is different from that in Florida, is different from that one in Maryland. So even within the same state, there may also be multiple types of Medicaid plans. So that's why two people can have Medicaid, and one might be covered to go to a certain facility, and the other one might not be able to go to that facility. So that's why internet research only gets you so far, and it's important to realize that. Eventually, you're going to have to start making some phone calls and ask very specific questions. And making sure you know what questions to ask is really important. So when you talk to a facility, you're not just going to ask, do you accept Medicaid? Because if they say yes, you might think, okay, we're good to go, and it may not be the case. So you want to have your specific plan details and ask if they accept that plan. You also want to know, do they take it for detox? What about residential treatment? What about outpatient treatment? What about partial hospitalization treatment? Will someone help coordinate aftercare planning? Is that part of your insurance coverage? And these questions are really valuable, and it's much more helpful than just saying, do you take Medicaid? And any facility that you talk to, any admissions intake coordinator, they should be more than happy to answer these questions. So just make sure you know what to ask before going into it so that you know what your options are. One other thing I discovered, which I just think is worth pointing out, is that some of the largest and most heavily advertised treatment brands aren't always the best starting point for someone with Medicaid. And that's not a criticism of their treatment. It's not saying that it's a bad place to go. It's just a simple reality that some of the larger national treatment facilities don't work with Medicaid or only work with Medicaid at some of their locations. So again, the challenge is just not knowing which locations take Medicaid, if they take your plan. So the advice here is fairly simple. It's just don't assume, call the admissions team, tell them exactly what plan you have, and see if they accept it. But just as a generality, some of these larger national brands don't tend to take Medicaid as often. And that's one of the reasons I started looking beyond the biggest advertised names and more closely at programs that very specifically work with Medicaid. One place that stood out to me a lot was Avenues Recovery. They have a lot of different locations, and from what I've found, it seems that all or almost all of these locations work with Medicaid in multiple different states. So this can make them a much more realistic option for people that don't have private insurance and can't afford self-pay options. Something else that really stood out to me about Avenues Recovery is that they offer multiple levels of care at most of their locations, and this makes it a lot easier to move from detox to residential to outpatient treatment without having to start over with a completely different provider and finding someone new who takes Medicaid. So, of course, coverage varies by location, and what's the best fit for you depends on your situation. So always verify directly with the admissions team, but it seems that most of their facilities do take Medicaid. So just consider that and reach out if that's something you're considering. Take to try to find the right facility. The first thing you should do is find your Medicaid plan. Get your insurance card, write down the exact plan name, and know exactly what kind of coverage you have. The second thing you should do is call the customer service number on the back of the card. Tell them you're looking for addiction treatment and ask for a list of in-network providers. Be specific about the level of care you need also, whether it's detox, inpatient, outpatient, or all of the above. The next thing you should do is make a list of facilities. They should be able to give you a list of facilities that accept Medicaid, or at least a website you can go to so that you can scroll through and look on your own. Make a list of possible options. The insurance provider lists aren't always perfect. They give you a better starting point, but even these are wrong sometimes, so make a preliminary list, but then you're going to need to call each facility still. After you make a list of facilities, it can be helpful to do kind of a brief overview of each facility, look at the reviews, see what levels of care they offer, and put a few on a shorter list. Next, call each of these facilities. Verify that they do in fact take your Medicaid plan. Ask if they accept it for detox, inpatient, outpatient. Is there a wait list? Ask how quickly they could get you or your loved one admitted. And then ask them what happens next. This is something that a lot of families forget to ask, but you want to know what happens after detox. Do you get to go straight into residential treatment, or is there some sort of waiting list? Do they offer outpatient treatment that you can transition into after that? Will they help coordinate all these levels of care for you? Because treatment doesn't end when someone gets a bed into a detox facility or an inpatient center. Recovery is a process, and you want to make sure that you understand the entire journey and that you or your loved one is not left sort of, not knowing what to do after you've completed one certain level of care. You then want to compare all of your options, gather information, compare facilities. Yes, you want to know if they accept your insurance. You want to know how soon you can get in, but it's also important to know how the quality of treatment is. Do they seem prepared to help you? And are they willing to answer all of your questions? And also just keep in mind, the best option isn't always the first facility you find. You really want to make sure that you're going to the right place. So you want to have a few different options. Finally, verify everything. Before making a final decision, just double check all the coverage information, write down who you spoke with, and try to reach out to them again to see if they can just confirm that they do in fact take your plan and that you or your loved one can get into that facility quickly. So just make sure you understand everything about the facility that you want to go to and verify everything. And this should give you a very good starting point of how to make this choice. If you're going through this process right now, I know that it can feel incredibly overwhelming. But you don't have to become an insurance expert overnight. You just have to be willing to put a little bit of work in, make some phone calls, keep notes, and just make a list so that you can figure out what's really best for you or your loved one. And if you call a facility and they're either not willing to answer your questions or they don't know if they accept your plan, it's probably time to just keep looking because there's plenty of facilities that will answer all your questions and be happy to help you every step of the way. I hope this has at least helped give you an understanding of what to look for and how to move forward when you're making this difficult but really important choice.